Now this is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is, perhaps, the end of the beginning. A toast rises in a gilded hall, November 1942. London is tired, thin, yet defiantly alive. The Second Battle of El Alamein has turned finally toward Allied hands. And Churchill, heavier with duty than with ceremony, stands and gives the world a new way to mark time. Not with fireworks, not with victory parades, with a sentence that shrugs off illusion and stares the long road in the face. He isn't promising comfort. He isn't selling hope wrapped in ribbons. He's teaching you how to move when the fog refuses to lift. And that, right there, is our lesson tonight. Learn to name your turning points honestly, or you will bleed energy chasing fantasies. Churchill's line is a compass. It says, "You are not done, but you are no longer lost." That is how real momentum feels. Let's drop the camera back a little. The hall is the Lord Mayor's Day luncheon at the Mansion House. The news from North Africa is the first true gust of wind at Britain's back since 1940. Yet Churchill refuses to declare an ending. Why? Because he knows the cost of false closure. The last thing a leader should do after surviving a storm is pretend the sky has turned to summer. He plants a flag at an honest midpoint, end of the beginning. And in that phrase, he gives us a rule that still works now. Progress demands new strength, not less of it. Imagine applying that to your life. You survive the diagnosis. You pass the exam on the third try. You finally get hired after months of interviews. Relief might tempt you to coast, but Churchill would tap the map and say, mark the line. Yes, feel the wind. Yes, but sharpen your tools, because the next terrain is different. He's reminding you that every small victory is an invitation to reinvent, not a pass to relax. The terrain ahead will not yield to yesterday's tactics. It requires a new mind. Let's jump back 27 years. It's 1915. The Dardanelles have gone wrong, and Churchill, the architect in the public mind, falls with the wreckage. He resigns. He vanishes from grand rooms, and then, quietly, he joins the front as a lieutenant colonel, commanding a battalion in the mud of the Western Front. In the cold, he writes letters home to Clementine. Doubt swirls like the winter wind. He takes responsibility. He tends to his men. He paints in spare hours to keep the darkness from swallowing him. This is not triumph. This is the anatomy of rebuilding. We romanticize comebacks as cinematic montages. He did it with blisters, not violins. If the 1942 line teaches us to plot the midpoint honestly, the 1915 letters teach us the gritty mechanics of starting again. Strip away the title. Step into service. Master the cold basics. You want resilience? Churchill shows you the uglier side of it, standing still when the world has moved on without you, learning to be useful at a smaller scale before you are trusted again at a larger one. There's no shortcut, but there is a pattern, and the pattern is mirrored in his voice across the years. May 13, 1940, he stands in Parliament and says, "You ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word: victory." That's not bravado. That's clarity carved from chaos. He doesn't give 10 aims. He gives one. He doesn't fill the air with adjectives. He picks a noun that bites. When everything shakes, leaders use fewer words and stronger ones. In your career, your team, your home, the moment pressure rises, your aim must simplify. What, in one word, are you doing here? Recover, protect, build, finish. Clarity is a weapon. Pause and think about the relationship between those moments. El Alamein gives us the timeline, end of the beginning. Gallipoli and the trenches give us the craft, rebuild, quietly, humbly. The 1940 speech gives us the target, victory, single-minded and disciplined. The lessons braid into a single rope you can actually climb. Tell the truth about where you are, do the humble work you can, cut down to a single aim, and keep moving forward. But there's a problem. Life rarely gives you perfect visibility. Even Churchill couldn't always read the map. September 1939, on the radio, he says of Russia, "I cannot forecast to you the action of Russia. It is a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. But perhaps there is a key. He refuses to pretend certainty, and that refusal is another kind of leadership. He grants that some forces will stay opaque, and he keeps moving anyway. He looks for the key, the national interest, the pattern, the probabilistic path. Translate it into your day. Stop demanding perfect information before you act. No decision worth making waits for full clarity. Find your key. Maybe the key is a first call. Maybe it's altering the scope. Maybe it's a test. But stop worshiping the illusion that more data will remove all risk. Churchill saw that in war, delay sometimes kills more people than a wrong move corrected quickly. The same is true in careers and relationships. Act with a hypothesis, learn, adjust, move again. Wartime language can feel distant, but his lessons become intimate when you step into his quieter rooms. He had a name for his depression, the black dog. He didn't play hero against it. He worked around it. He found refuge in painting, writing essays like Painting as a Pastime, teaching himself that a distracted mind could become a steady hand if given color and canvas. Not escape, recovery, not denial, discipline of a gentler sort. For him, painting was not leisure. It was a ritual for making his mind usable again. If your mind is frayed, do not wait for willpower to return on its own. Design recovery like you would design a campaign. Put anchors in your week that do not depend on mood. A long walk at dusk. Pages you write before anyone is awake. A skill you practice when your phone is in another room. Churchill didn't become great by working endlessly. He became durable by finding ways to turn turbulence into craft. When he returned to the fray, he could carry more. There's another line he gave us, sharp as flint. Never was so much owed by so many to so few. It is a salute to the RAF pilots who shielded Britain in the Battle of Britain. But listen closely to the structure. It teaches gratitude at scale. He pours the nation's attention onto a handful of people whose labor held up the sky. Do you do that with your team? With your family? In your company? Who is carrying a weight that most never see? Leadership that endures makes gratitude visible and specific. It doesn't wait until the end. It marks the turning points by honoring the hands that turned them. And still, one more edge to the blade. In wartime, truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies. Churchill understood that not every plan should be public. Openness without judgment is a virtue in therapy, perhaps. Openness without discernment is a death sentence in strategy. He wasn't celebrating lies. He was protecting timing. Your goals, if they are fragile, need a perimeter. Not everyone has earned the right to hear them early. Share too soon, and you invite noise, envy, or careless advice to deform the plan before it stands on its legs. Guard your intent until it's robust enough to meet the air. This is the rhythm I want you to feel, beating underneath the quotes. Honest milestones, humble rebuilding, fewer stronger words, action inside uncertainty, recovery as craft, gratitude that names the few, privacy around the fragile. None of this is glamorous, which is exactly why it works when the room goes cold and the lights flicker. Now, what does it sound like when we pull these threads into today? Picture your own mansion house. Maybe it's a cramped kitchen after a long shift, bills on the table. Maybe it's a quiet office where a test score finally lifted you just above the line. Maybe it's a hospital hallway where the chart says stable, not cured. You could pretend the battle is over. Or you can speak to yourself with Churchill's cadence. Not the end, not the beginning of the end, but perhaps the end of the beginning. The words won't fix everything. They'll give you bearings. The rest is work, and work becomes possible when you pick a single word aim. Churchill had victory. You might have stability. You might have build. You might have finish. One word cuts the noise. Put it on your desk. Write it on your phone lock screen. Let it prune away distractions. Decisions get easier when you can hold a word up to them and ask, does this serve the aim or not? If not, cut. If yes, commit. That is how you make courage practical. Then comes the trench work, literal for him, figurative for you. What is the smallest, least glamorous action you would be embarrassed to take because it feels beneath your title? That might be exactly where you rebuild trust. Answer the email you've been ignoring. Join the front line, call your team handles without you. Solve a small customer problem with your own hands. Let people see you choosing service over status so that when you speak about larger aims, your words have weight. Information will never be perfect. A riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. He said it once about a great power. It applies just as well to markets, to moods, to the puzzle of other people. When you stop demanding certainty, you start designing experiments. You move. You learn. The map redraws itself not on your desk, but under your feet as you walk. And when your mind sags, as it will, don't ask it for virtue it doesn't have. Give it paint. Give it structured recovery. Put the black dog on a leash by giving your attention something steady to bite. That might be a craft. It might be lifting. It might be tending a garden plot behind your apartment. Don't call it self-care if that makes you roll your eyes. Call it maintenance, so the engine doesn't seize when you need it most. In the same breath, name the few in your life who keep the sky from falling. Say the words out loud. Send a note tonight. Churchill's sentence about the few isn't just national gratitude. It's a model for keeping morale alive. Gratitude that doesn't travel is just sentiment. Gratitude that arrives is fuel. Finally, give your plan a bodyguard. Not a fortress of paranoia, just a disciplined boundary. Don't announce your new discipline before you've practiced it in silence. Don't ask for applause in the stage of fragility. Let results be your press release. That's not secrecy. That's stewardship. Here's the beautiful irony. Churchill, famous for words, used words to narrow focus, not to inflate it. He etched phrases onto history because they were handles, short enough to grip when the storm knocked everything else out of your hands. Victory, the few, end of the beginning. Say them quietly to yourself the next time you want to quit. They're not magic. They are better. They are honest. At some point, you will need audacity again. That's when another line becomes a provocation. History will be kind to me, for I intend to write it. Strip the bravado. Hear the method. He's saying, I will do the work that makes a kind history possible. Notes, drafts, decisions, accountability. You cannot control the judges, but you can control the writing. The daily strokes that add up to a story you're not ashamed to read back. If your story lately has been a string of near misses, consider what Churchill did after his greatest miss. He went where he could be useful. He learned. He suffered. And he came back armed with more than ambition. He came back with patience and craft. That is what makes a leader dangerous to despair. Not noise, not swagger. Craft. The Mansion House quote is a minor miracle because it doesn't flatter the listener with false endings. It calls you into maturity. Children want endings after the first good day. Adults can hold paradox, the relief of a turn, the grind still ahead. That is why the phrase stays. It is, in management terms, a milestone review. It is, in human terms, a grown-up kind of hope. Midway through these words, I want to ask you something. Where, in your own life, do you sense the end of the beginning right now? And what's the next small action you will take before this day ends? If this kind of deep dive gives you strength for the week ahead, tap like and subscribe so you don't miss the next letter we unpack. Let's land this with a picture. It's late. Your desk is a map. Scribbles, coffee rings, a few names circled twice. The room hums with a tired, electric kind of quiet. You look at the mess and the fear says, wait for a sign. Churchill would cut the light across the table and say, stop waiting. Name the stage you are in. End of the beginning. Pick your one-word aim. Move a single piece on the board. Maybe that's rewriting an email that's become a knot. Maybe it's picking a date for a difficult conversation. Maybe it's scheduling a walk at the same hour for the next 7 days because your mind needs rhythm more than motivation. None of these are big. All of these are leverage. Resilience is not a personality trait you were born with. It's a design you return to. And when you feel pressure to prove yourself, borrow another trick from his playbook. Don't fill the air. Widen the silence. Use short sentences. Choose strong nouns. People don't remember everything you say. They remember the few words that ring true and carry them. Your job is to make those words solid enough to lean on. Take a final step back with me to that hall in 1942. Imagine Churchill standing at a lectern with the smell of candles and wet coats, and victory felt but not yet seen. He refuses the easy story. He chooses the hard one, the one that requires endurance, not applause. The hall breathes out, because when a leader names reality, courage breathes in. That is what you can give to your own room. Tell the truth about the road and then walk it. Others will find their cadence beside you. One last truth before we go. For all his sentences etched in bronze, Churchill's life was not a neat script. It lurched, it broke, it mended. He lost, he learned. He grew stubborn where stubbornness was needed, flexible where change would save lives. If you take only one thing from him tonight, take this. Resilience is the art of honest pacing. Don't call a finish line a start. Don't call a rest a retreat. Don't call confusion a verdict. Keep the lines clear. Keep the feet moving. Now this is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is, perhaps, the end of the beginning. Let that be your map. Mark the point you've reached. Accept the work still ahead. And then do the ordinary, unglamorous thing that moves you 1 mile further into a future you will be proud to write.